My fork trembled in the air, freezing, as silence took hold of the groaning Sunday table. I am Mrs. Eleanor Ellie Finch. I'm 72, a widow for 10 years, and that night I discovered that in my own home, I was nothing but a nuisance to the people I'd done the most for. What my son-in-law, Rupert Sterling, forgot, however, is that this useless old dear is the one who signs the checks that pay for his life of luxury. It was one of those beautiful English Sundays, the kind where you wake up early, with aches in your joints, but joy in your heart to please the family. I spent the whole morning in the kitchen. The smell of my classic roast chicken with all the trimmings, which my granddaughter Lottie adores, filled the entire house. I made the fluffy roast potatoes, the crisp Yorkshire puddings, the salad, all with my own money, bought from the local Tesco the day before, carrying heavy shopping bags in my trolley because they were all too busy to take me. When we served dinner, the table was full. My daughter, Penny, was on her mobile phone, as usual. My grandchildren, James and Lottie, ate quickly to get back to their video games, and at the head of the table, in the spot that belonged to my late husband, Arthur, sat Rupert. Rupert never fooled me much, but I tolerated him. For my daughter, you tolerate the intolerable. He ate as if the food magically appeared on the table. He helped himself 2 or 3 times to the best parts of the chicken. I stayed quiet, eating my chicken leg, happy to see everyone fed. It was when I stretched out my hand to take another spoonful of roast potatoes and a leftover piece of stuffing from the serving dish. My hand, full of age spots and marks from washing so much laundry and so many dishes, barely touched the serving spoon. Rupert stopped chewing, wiped his mouth with the cloth napkin that I had washed and ironed. He looked straight into my face and uttered the sentence that cut my heart like a sharpened knife. "Is this useless old dear going to eat everything again?" Time stopped. I felt my face burn. I looked at Penny, hoping she would say something, hoping she would say, "Respect my mother, Rupert. She made the food, but do you know what happened?" The whole table laughed. Rupert let out that loud, ugly chuckle. Penny gave a nervous titter, without taking her eyes off her phone screen, and quietly said, "Oh, love, leave Mom alone. She has the appetite of a child." Even my grandchildren, whom I helped raise, changing their nappies and bathing them, laughed along with their father. No one defended me. No one remembered that the useless old dear had woken up at 6 a.m. to season the chicken. No one remembered that the table, the chairs, the house, and even the car in the driveway were bought with the sweat of my work and my husband's pension. I felt small. I felt like nothing, like old furniture you leave in a corner and kick when you pass. The shame was so great that the knot in my throat wouldn't let the food go down. Slowly, I put my fork down on the plate. I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout. I learned from life that those who shout lose the argument, and those who speak softly hold the power. I got up slowly, feeling the weight of my 72 years on my back. I delicately wiped my mouth and said in a firm but low voice, "Excuse me, I've lost my appetite." "Oh, Ellie, don't be so dramatic," Rupert retorted, already helping himself to the potatoes I was about to take. "Go on and watch your favorite ITV drama. That's what you do best." I turned my back and walked down the hallway to my bedroom. Every laugh I heard from the dining room was a hammer blow to my chest. I entered my refuge, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at Arthur's photo on the bedside table. "Oh, my old man, if you were here, he wouldn't dare," I whispered, letting a stubborn tear roll down. "They think I'm useless, Arthur. They think I'm only good for cooking and cleaning." I cried. I cried until I sobbed. I cried for my daughter's ingratitude, my son-in-law's rudeness, and my grandchildren's lack of affection. I stayed there for about 30 minutes, feeling sorry for myself, but then my eyes fell upon the drawer beneath the bedside cabinet, the drawer I kept locked. I wiped my tears. The sadness was giving way to something else, a different heat. It wasn't shame. It was anger, and with the anger came clarity. "Useless," I repeated the word, testing its taste in my mouth. I opened the drawer. Inside was the brown document folder. I took out the papers and started reading, even though I knew what was written there by heart. Title: Deeds to the House. In the name of Eleanor Elizabeth Finch. Statement from the joint account that Rupert used for his company. Principal holder, Eleanor Elizabeth Finch. The contract for the platinum credit card that was in his wallet. Holder, Eleanor. Additional card holder, Rupert. I started adding everything up in my head. Rupert posed as a successful businessman, but the truth was that his auto spares shop only hadn't gone bust last year because I injected the money from the sale of Arthur's old workshop site. He drove a new car because I financed it in my name, since his name was blacklisted due to poor credit. He ate the best food because the Tesco card was mine. He called me useless while stuffing his belly with the food I paid for, sitting in the house that is mine, with the credit card in his pocket that depends on my signature. I found it amusing, a sad but powerful amusement. Well, Rupert, I said to myself, running my hand over the bank paper, we'll see how useful your mother-in-law is tomorrow morning. I didn't go back to the living room. I heard them finish dinner. I heard Penny washing the dishes carelessly, probably leaving the grease for me to clean tomorrow, and I heard the television on loudly. They didn't even come to see if I was alive. I took a long bath, put on my best nightgown, said my prayers, but this time I asked God for forgiveness in advance for what I was about to do. It's not revenge, Lord. It's justice. It's a lesson. Sometimes you need to remove the ground from under someone's feet for them to learn to walk properly. I took out my mobile phone, the simple model they always mocked, calling it a brick phone for old people, and looked up the number I had saved in the address book. Dave, High Street Bank. Dave adored me. I took him a Victoria sponge cake every time I went to renew my investments. I looked at the clock. It was 9 p.m., late to call, but I knew Dave would call me back. Or rather, I would wait until 9 a.m. sharp. I planned every step. Rupert had an important meeting tomorrow at midday. He was always boasting about it, saying he was going to close a big deal and needed to use the corporate credit card to impress the partners at lunch. That card, which was actually my additional card. Besides, the loan repayment for his shop was due tomorrow. He always left it until the last day, using my account's overdraft limit, swearing he would pay it back later, and he never fully did. I lay down, but I didn't sleep right away. I stared at the ceiling, listening to Rupert snoring from the next room. He slept the sleep of the unjust, peaceful, with a full belly, thinking the useless old dear had already forgotten the offense. Little did he know that the useless old dear was awake, sharpening the guillotine. When the sun rose on Monday, I was already up. I didn't make breakfast. I didn't set the table. I sat in the armchair in the living room, dressed in my outdoor clothes, handbag on my lap, waiting for the right time. When they woke up, they were surprised by the silence and the lack of the smell of breakfast. Rupert walked past the living room, adjusting his tie, in a hurry. "Well, where's the tea, Eleanor? Are you on strike?" he asked cynically, not even remembering the humiliation of the night before. I just smiled, a calm, serene smile. "No tea today, Rupert. I have an early appointment." "An appointment? Are you going to the bridge club?" He laughed, grabbing his car keys. "Bye, mother-in-law. See if you do something useful today." He slammed the door and left. My daughter, Penny, walked past me, muttering a shy, "Morning, Mum," and left for work, too. I was left alone. I took a deep breath. The clock struck 10 a.m. The bank branch had just opened. I dialed Dave's number. "Hello, Dave. It's Ellie Finch. How are you, dear?" "Ellie, what a pleasure. Has something happened?" "Yes, something has, my dear. I need you to do me an urgent favor. You know that additional card for Rupert and that overdraft limit linked to my main account?" "Yes, Ellie. What about them?" "I want you to cancel the card now. Freeze everything and withdraw the direct debit authorization for his shop loan from my account." "But Ellie," the manager hesitated, "if I freeze the card now, he won't be able to buy a newspaper. And if I remove the debit, the loan interest will skyrocket today." "Does Rupert know about this?" I sighed, remembering the sentence. "Is this useless old dear going to eat everything again?" "No, Dave, he doesn't know, but he'll find out soon enough. You can cut everything. The useless old dear is tired of paying the bills." I hung up the phone. My heart was pounding, but my soul was light. I got up, went to the kitchen, and made a fresh cup of tea just for myself. I ate a slice of toast with butter that tasted of victory. Half an hour later, my mobile didn't ring, but the landline in the living room started to blare. I let it ring. It rang once, twice, 3 times. It was Rupert's number. On the 4th time, I answered with the sweetest, most innocent voice in the world. "Hello, Finch family residence." On the other end, Rupert's voice was so high-pitched it sounded like he had swallowed a whistle. "Eleanor, what happened to the card? I'm at the petrol station and the attendant said it was declined. People are honking in the queue. What have you done?" I held back a laugh, adjusted my spectacles, and replied with the calm of someone who has watched life pass by. "Well, my dear son-in-law, it must be a system error. Or perhaps the bank realized that this card was in the hands of a person who considers its owner useless." I hung up on him and unplugged the telephone cable. The game had begun, and the useless old dear was winning by a landslide. The silence in the house was a music I hadn't heard for years. With the telephone unplugged and Rupert, I imagine, tearing his hair out at that petrol station, I had something that had been stolen from me a long time ago. Peace to think. I am Ellie Finch, and if there's one thing that age teaches you, it's that silence speaks much louder than shouting. While my son-in-law shouted at petrol station attendants and my daughter must have been trying to call my mobile, which I had left forgotten on silent mode inside my underwear drawer, I walked towards the study. That room was, until yesterday, forbidden territory for me. "Mom, don't touch anything in there. There are important company papers," Penny would say. "Eleanor, you'll mess up my organization," Rupert would complain. His organization. Little did I know. I turned the doorknob. The door was unlocked. I went in. The smell was of stale paper and that cheap aftershave Rupert used to pretend it was imported cologne. The desk was a chaos. Piles of papers, coffee cups with sugar residue at the bottom, snack wrappers. This was where the great businessman worked. The man who called me useless couldn't even throw rubbish in the bin. I sat in his swivel chair. It was comfortable, much more so than the hard kitchen chair where I spent my mornings peeling potatoes for him to stuff his face. "Let's see the size of the hole, Rupert," I murmured to myself, adjusting my reading glasses on the tip of my nose. I started poking around. It didn't take me 5 minutes to realize that the successful business was a house of cards about to collapse with a single breath. I opened the first drawer, overdue electricity bills for the shop, collection notices from the parts supplier. I opened the second drawer, and that's when my blood, which I thought had already cooled, boiled again. Deep inside, hidden under some car magazines, there was a thick brown envelope, and inside it, a contract. I started reading and my hands trembled, not from weakness, but from pure indignation. It was a bank loan application for a very high amount, an amount that would buy 3 terraced houses. And do you know what was written in the collateral field? Residential property located on Sycamore Drive. My house, the house Arthur and I built brick by brick, the house where I raised my daughter. He was trying to mortgage my house to cover the holes he'd made in the shop. But that wasn't the worst. The worst was on the last page. There was a signature in the property owner field. It read, Eleanor Elizabeth Finch. I ran my finger over the signature. It was similar, very similar, but it wasn't mine. The tail of the F was crooked. The S was too slanted. Forgery. The air left me for a second. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Memories from 30 years ago came into my head. Me sitting next to Arthur at the kitchen table, doing the month's accounts in the ledger. Arthur was good at manual labor, but I was always the one who looked after the money. "You have a calculator for a brain, Ellie," he would say, laughing and kissing my forehead. "If it wasn't for you, we'd still be renting today." I looked after everything. I negotiated the land. I went to the bank to fight for lower rates. I built up the nest egg that paid for Penny's education. And now this man, this cheap suit who entered my family with nothing, thought he could steal from me and still call me useless at dinner time? He thought I was a senile old woman who would sign any paper without reading it. Or worse, he thought he could sign for me. I opened my eyes. The sadness was gone. In its place, a coldness I didn't know existed. I wasn't just the mother-in-law who cooked. I was the owner of everything, and he had forgotten the basic rule of business. Never underestimate the person holding the safe key. I took the forged contract and folded it carefully. I put it in the pocket of my cardigan. That wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my weapon. It was proof of a crime. I continued looking through his things. I found credit card statements. While I was saving money by buying the cheapest brand of washing powder, Rupert was spending £800 on business dinners at a fancy steakhouse. There were expenses at women's clothing stores that I was absolutely sure were not for my daughter Penny, because she was always complaining that she had no new clothes. Oh, Penny, my blind daughter, I thought with pity. But the pity lasted little. She laughed when he called me useless. She chose her side. Now I would choose mine. I took my mobile from my pocket. I had 15 missed calls from Penny and 8 from Rupert. I smiled. I let it ring a little longer. Desperation is a flavor that needs to simmer over a low heat. I got up from the study chair, feeling 2 inches taller. I looked at that messy room and saw not the mess of a busy businessman, but the trail of an irresponsible boy playing at being a man with his mother-in-law's money. I went to the living room, grabbed my old red leather telephone directory that sat next to the landline. I flipped to the letter T. Thorne, solicitor, Mr. Geoffrey Thorne was Arthur's friend, a serious gentleman, the kind who wears braces and doesn't laugh easily. He handled the will. He always told me, "Ellie, anything you need, any document that young man wants you to sign, call me." I never called out of pride, to keep the peace in the family. The peace ended yesterday, at chicken time. I dialed his office number. Dr. Thorne's office. "Good morning." "Good morning, dear. It's Ellie Finch, Arthur from Finch & Son Motors' widow. Is Mr. Thorne available?" "One moment, Ellie." Seconds later, Geoffrey's grave, husky voice emerged. "Ellie, long time no see. Has something serious happened? You never call this early." "Geoffrey, my friend." My voice was firm, without wavering. "I need you to come to my house now. Or rather, I need to come to you. I have a document in hand that I believe constitutes fraud and forgery. And the criminal is sleeping in the next room." I heard silence on the other end of the line, followed by the sound of a chair scraping. "I'll wait for you in half an hour, Eleanor. Bring everything you have." I hung up. I looked in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me had white hair and deep wrinkles, yes, but her eyes, her eyes shone with an intelligence they thought had dried up. "Useless old dear," I repeated, straightening the collar of my blouse. "You will see the usefulness of an old woman who knows where the bodies are buried." As I was leaving, I heard the sound of a car braking sharply outside the house. It was them. Rupert must have managed to get a lift or a taxi, probably paying with loose change he found in the glove compartment, since his card was blocked. The living room door flew open. Rupert rushed in, sweating, red as a beetroot, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. Penny followed right behind him, looking tearful and angry. "Eleanor!" he bellowed, pointing his finger at me. "Have you gone mad? Do you know what you put me through?" I had to leave my watch as collateral at the petrol station. The manager laughed in my face. The card was flagged as suspicious fraud. I stood still in the middle of the living room, holding my handbag. I didn't retreat a single step. Penny stepped in front of him. "Mom, what's gotten into you? Where's the respect for your daughter's husband? Did you freeze the accounts? Why aren't you answering the phone? Rupert missed his midday meeting." I looked at the two of them. The couple living off me, the parasite and the host who laughed at his jokes. I took a deep breath, channeling all the calm a grandmother should have, and released the first part of my plan. I put on my best confused face, the look of a forgetful old lady they loved to mock. "Oh dear," I frowned, clutching the strap of my bag tightly. "I didn't mean any harm, my son. The bank manager called me early. He said there were strange movements. He said it looked like someone was trying to steal my money." I got scared. "You know how old people are, don't you? I had them freeze it to protect us." Rupert stopped shouting. He went pale. The word steal hit him like a punch. He exchanged a panicked look with Penny. "Strange movements?" he stammered, his voice dropping. "What kind of movements, Eleanor?" I don't understand these modern things, Rupert." I lied with the greatest naturalness. He mentioned some difficult names. Loan this and that, mortgage who knows where, cash diverted. I just said, "Dave, block everything. If someone touched my money without me knowing, they're a thief, and they need to go to jail." I saw a drop of sweat run down Rupert's temple. He knew. He knew I was talking about his shenanigans, but he couldn't admit it without giving himself away. He was cornered by his own greed. "But Mum," Penny tried to speak, now softer. "You didn't have to freeze Rupert's card. He uses it for work." For work? My daughter? I interrupted, looking into her eyes. I thought it was for lunch, and if he works so hard, why does he need to use his mother's pension card? Doesn't the successful businessman have his own account? The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time in 10 years, no one laughed. No one made a joke. Rupert tried to smile, a weak, fearful smile. Eleanor, you misunderstood. I'll go to the bank to sort this out right now with Dave. It must be a misunderstanding. Give me your ID, and I'll go and unfreeze it. I took a step towards the door. No need to trouble yourself, my son. I'll go myself. You? He laughed nervously. You don't understand anything about banking, Eleanor. You'll end up making a mess. Let me handle it. You are. He was about to say useless, but the word died in his throat when he saw the hard glint in my eye. I am what, Rupert? I challenged. Finish the sentence. He swallowed hard. You are elderly. You need to rest. Exactly, I smiled. But today I woke up with a lot of energy, and since I'm the account holder, Dave will only deal with me. And there's one more thing. I stopped with my hand on the exit doorknob. They stared at me, frozen. I found a very interesting paper in your office, Rupert. That one about the collateral. Rupert looked like he was about to faint. He leaned on the sofa. The color drained from his face. You went into my office? I did, and I found it very curious. But we can talk about that later. Now I have an appointment with Mr. Geoffrey Thorne. Remember him? The solicitor at law. He loves these cases of banking misunderstandings. I opened the door and walked out into the sunny street. Bye, Penny. Bye, Rupert. If you're hungry, there are eggs in the fridge. The chicken is all gone. I walked to the gate without looking back, hearing the muffled shouts of an argument beginning inside the house. What have you done, Rupert? Penny screamed. Shut up! Let me think, he replied. The fear had changed sides. I called a taxi on the corner for the Central Chambers, solicitor's office. And drive quickly, I told the driver. The useless old dear here is in a hurry for justice. As the car drove, I took the contract from my pocket and smoothed the paper. The first battle was won, but the war was just beginning. Rupert wouldn't give up easily. He was a coward, and cowards are dangerous when cornered. But he didn't know that I had one more trump card. A secret Arthur guarded closely, and only I knew where it was. If Rupert thought the money in the account was all I had, he was in for a surprise that would bring that businessman to his knees. The tables had turned, and now the cards and the money were in my hand. Mr. Thorne's office smelled of old wood and strong coffee, the same smell I felt when Arthur came here to resolve issues with the workshop 30 years ago. Sitting in that leather armchair, watching the solicitor examine the forged contract with a magnifying glass, I felt a cold calm. It wasn't the calm of peace. It was the calm of the storm before the lightning strike. Ellie. Geoffrey took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes, looking tired just from seeing the mess my son-in-law had made. This is a crime, my friend. Forgery. Fraud. If we take this to the police now, Rupert will be leaving here in handcuffs. I took a sip of the water the secretary had served. My hand was no longer trembling. Jail is too little, Geoffrey. Jail? He'll pay bail, get out, and still pose as the victim. Say his mother-in-law has gone crazy. I want more. What do you want then? I want him to feel the ground disappear. I want him to lose his king of the castle pose. I want him to understand, pound for pound, the weight of calling the woman who supports his life useless. I took a deep breath. I want a full audit of the shop. I want to know where every last nut and bolt Arthur left behind has gone, and I want you to prepare the paperwork to remove him from the management. But not now. Geoffrey raised a curious eyebrow. Not now? If I attack now, he'll run, hide money, invent lies. I'm going to give him rope, Geoffrey. Lots of rope. They say the one who gives too much rope ends up hanging themselves, right? Well, Rupert will have enough rope to hang a swing in the garden. I left the office with a black folder under my arm. Inside it were not complaints, but copies of old bank statements and a power of attorney that gave me full powers over the company. A document Arthur had made years ago, foreseeing that one day I might need to take charge if he passed away, and which Rupert, in his arrogance, didn't even know existed. I returned home in the middle of the afternoon. The house was too quiet. When I opened the door, I found a scene that looked like bad theater. The living room coffee table was set for afternoon tea. Shop-bought cake, because Penny can't even bake an egg, carton juice, and a vase of wilting flowers that must have been bought at the traffic lights. Rupert was sitting on the sofa with his head down, his hands between his knees. Penny was next to him, her eyes red. When they saw me, Rupert jumped up. The transformation was instantaneous. The roaring, humiliating lion had turned into a frightened kitten. "Eleanor, thank goodness you're here." He came towards me, trying to take my hand, but I shifted my handbag and he was left grabbing air. "We were so worried. You left without a word." Penny was almost calling the police. I looked at Penny. She avoided my gaze, worried or afraid that the source of money had completely dried up. "I went to sort out my things, Rupert. Old people have their quirks, don't they?" I replied in a sweet tone of voice, but with my gaze fixed on his. "And I went to the doctor too." "The doctor?" Penny jumped up, alarmed. "Are you ill, Mum?" "My head, my daughter, my memory. You know how it is. Sometimes you forget things, forget where you put the key, forget whether you signed a paper or didn't sign it." I dropped the sentence into the air and saw Rupert swallow hard. He understood the message but preferred to pretend he didn't. The coward's tactic is always to deny until the end. "You need to rest, Eleanor," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sit here. Have a bit of cake. We wanted to apologize for dinner yesterday. I was stressed. I said silly things. You know I think of you as a mother, don't you?" "A mother?" The word sounded like an insult in his mouth. I sat in the armchair. My armchair, the one they wanted to throw away last month to buy a modern one. "It's all right, Rupert. Water under the bridge. Lie. I hold a grudge like someone saves money in a savings account, accruing interest." Then he scratched his head nervously. "About the bank. Did you manage to sort it out? Did Dave unfreeze the card? You know, the shop can't stop. I have suppliers to pay tomorrow morning, and without that limit." I looked at the dry cake on the table. I cut a piece very slowly, letting him suffer in anticipation. "Oh, the bank? Dave said it will take a few days to analyze the fraud." I made air quotes with my fingers. "But he told me a curious thing, Rupert. He said the shop has been in the red for 6 months. The silence weighed heavy in the room. "It's the economy, Eleanor," he rushed to say, sweating cold. "The spares market has dropped a lot, but I have a plan. Tomorrow I have a meeting with a big supplier, Mr. Harrison. If I close the deal with him, we turn the game around." "But?" I prompted. "But what? I need you to come to the shop tomorrow." "Me? At the shop?" I frowned. "But I'm a useless old dear, Rupert. What am I going to do at a spares shop?" He flushed with embarrassment, but necessity was greater than pride. "Don't say that, mother-in-law. I need you to sign some checks as the account holder. Mr. Harrison is old-fashioned. He was very fond of your Arthur and said he will only negotiate if there is a family guarantee. If you go there, just to be present, he'll sign the contract." It was the perfect opportunity. He was inviting me into the lion's den, thinking I would be the bait. Little did he know that I would be the hunter. "All right, Rupert," I smiled, wiping a crumb of cake from the corner of my mouth. "I'll go. It's been a while since I saw Arthur's workshop." The next morning, I put on my best gray suit, the one I wore to Arthur's funeral. It was sober, elegant, and commanded respect. I pinned a pearl brooch to the lapel. It wasn't clothes for a grandmother to knit. It was the clothing of a matriarch. Rupert drove the car in silence, nervously tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. He tried to start conversations about the weather, about the traffic, but I answered in monosyllables, looking out the window. I was revisiting the city I helped build with my work, and which now looked strange to my eyes. When we arrived at Finch and Son Motors, the name he insisted on keeping to use my husband's credibility, my heart tightened. The facade was dirty, the sign peeling. Where there used to be a well-kept garden at the entrance, there was now weeds and cigarette butts. We went in. The smell of old grease and dust invaded me. I didn't see the organized bustle of the past. I saw 2 mechanics sitting in a corner on their phones and a receptionist filing her nails. "Good morning," I said loudly, my voice echoing in the warehouse. The employees jumped in surprise. A man in dirty overalls came out from under a lifted car. He wiped his hands on a rag and squinted to see better. "Ellie," your voice is breaking my heart. Is that really you? It was Barry, Arthur's right-hand man, the man who worked with us for 30 years. He was older, thinner, with a sad look. Barry. I opened my arms and he came, shyly, to give me an oil-stained hug that I did not refuse. It's been so long, my friend. You disappeared, Ellie. He whispered close to my ear so Rupert wouldn't hear. This isn't the same anymore. It's a mess. You're Rupert. He doesn't know how to treat us. The wages have been 2 months late. I felt a tightness in my chest, and immediately after, a wave of anger. Late wages. While Rupert was dining out and buying new suits, I stepped away from Barry and looked him in the eyes. Don't worry, Barry. I'm back. Rupert appeared, clapping his hands, trying to disperse the moment. Come on, people. Work. Eleanor, come to my office. Mr. Harrison will be here in 10 minutes. Don't stand around talking to the peons. Peons? Arthur called them partners. I walked to the glass-walled office on the mezzanine. From up there, I could see the whole shop, and what I saw was desolation. Empty shelves, scattered boxes. The company was dying of neglect. I entered Rupert's office. Freezing air conditioning, expensive leather chair, bottle of imported whiskey on the cabinet. The contrast with the misery downstairs was revolting. I sat in the visitor's chair and waited. 10 minutes later, Mr. Harrison arrived, a tall, bald man with a stern face. He carried a heavy briefcase. Rupert, he greeted curtly, without shaking hands. I came because you said you were settling the outstanding balance today. Where is the money? Rupert smiled nervously and pointed to me. Mr. Harrison, look who's here. Eleanor Finch, the widow of the great Arthur. She came personally to guarantee our partnership. Mr. Harrison looked at me. His expression immediately softened. He took off his hat. Mrs. Finch, what a surprise. My belated condolences for Arthur. He was a man of gold. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, I replied with dignity. You were always very fair with us, too. Rupert interrupted anxiously. So, Harrison, Eleanor is here to sign the checks. She's the account holder. You know, inheritance bureaucracy, but the money is there. You can trust us. He placed a checkbook in front of me and a pen. Sign here, mother-in-law. The total amount, £50,000. I looked at the check. £50,000. I looked at Rupert. He was sweating, pleading with his eyes. Sign it, useless old dear. Sign it and save me, his eyes screamed. I looked at Mr. Harrison, who was waiting with his arms crossed. I picked up the pen. Rupert sighed with relief. I brought the pen close to the paper and stopped. Mr. Harrison, I said calmly, before I sign, could you explain to me what this debt is about? Is it for new parts? Rupert froze. Mum, no need to bother the man with details. It's parts. It's all parts. Just sign. Mr. Harrison frowned. No, Rupert, let her ask. Mrs. Finch, this isn't for new parts. This is a debt from 6 months ago. Parts I delivered and was never paid for. And there's the interest. Your son-in-law said the money was invested and that he needed your signature to release it. I dropped the pen on the table. The sound of plastic hitting the wood sounded like a gunshot. I turned to Rupert slowly. Rupert, did you lie to Mr. Harrison? Me? No. It's a manner of speaking. The money is there. No, it's not. I cut in firmly. The money in the company account is gone, Rupert. I saw the statements yesterday. Mr. Harrison widened his eyes. Rupert went white as paper. Eleanor, he hissed through gritted teeth. What are you doing? Do you want to ruin me? Speak softly. I stood up from the chair. Now, I wasn't the little old lady. I was the owner. I'm not ruining you, Rupert. You ruined yourself when you thought you could spend what you didn't have and treat the employees downstairs like rubbish. I turned to the supplier. Mr. Harrison, I will not sign this check today. The man went red with anger. Then I will execute the debt. I will protest the company. I will take everything. Calm down. I raised my hand authoritatively. You will not get paid today because I have just ordered a forensic audit of the shop's accounts. My solicitor, Mr. Jeffrey Thorne, will contact you. If the debt is real and proven, I will pay it out of my own pocket, but I will pay it directly to you, without passing it through the hands of this. I pointed at Rupert with disgust. This incompetent manager. Rupert fell back into the chair. He was in shock. He never imagined that the useless old dear knew what a forensic audit was. Audit, he whispered. But it will show everything, Rupert. I completed relentlessly. It will show the dinners, the clothes, the trips, and it will show that crooked signature on the mortgage contract for my house. Mr. Harrison, who was not foolish, understood the atmosphere. He put the papers back in his briefcase. Mrs. Finch, you've always been a woman of your word. I await Mr. Thorne's contact. As for you, Rupert, he looked at my son-in-law with contempt. Thank this lady that you aren't leaving here under arrest today. The supplier left. It was just Rupert and me in the glass aquarium. The silence was deafening. Downstairs, the mechanics looked up, sensing that something big was happening. Rupert lifted his head. His eyes were full of tears, but it wasn't repentance. It was panic. You set me up, brought me here to humiliate me in front of Harrison. I humiliated you? I gave a dry laugh. You called me useless in front of my family because of a piece of chicken, Rupert. I'm just showing you reality. And the reality is that you broke my husband's company. I walked towards the door. Oh, and one more thing. Barry told me the wages are late. I took a checkbook from my handbag. My personal checkbook, not the company's. Go to the counter and tell all the employees to come up. I'm going to pay everyone's month now. And you? I looked at him with pity. You're going to sit right there and watch the useless old dear do what you weren't competent enough to do. I left the office and went to the mezzanine railing. Barry, everyone, you can come up. Today is payday. The shout of joy that came from downstairs made the floor shake. I looked back into the office. Rupert had his head buried in his hands. The silent execution was complete. I had taken away his credibility with suppliers, the respect of his employees, and control of the money. But the final blow was yet to come. He still lived in my house. He was still married to my daughter, and he still thought he could reverse the game with emotional blackmail. Just wait until we get home, Rupert, I thought, walking down the stairs to the cheers of the mechanics. Your suitcase is already packed in my mind. I returned home by taxi, my body aching, but my soul cleansed. Through the car window, I saw my street, the trees I planted on the pavement, the gate my late Arthur painted dark green so many times. That was all my kingdom, and by pure blindness of a mother's love, I almost let an intruder destroy everything. When I entered the living room, the silence was heavy, but different. It wasn't peace, it was the calm before the storm. Penny was already home. Rupert, the coward, must have called her on the way, filling my daughter's head with poison. I am Ellie Finch, and if I learned one thing in this life, it's that a lie has short legs, but it runs fast. The truth is lame. It takes time, but when it arrives, it knocks down any giant. I went straight to the kitchen for a glass of water. My hands were trembling a little, not from fear, but from adrenaline. At 72, you shouldn't have to go through such strong emotions, but God gives the cold according to the blanket. I heard the sound of Rupert's car screeching into the driveway. He was furious. The man who was humiliated in front of the employees he despised was coming at me with everything. I stood leaning against the sink, holding my glass. The kitchen door flew open. "Penny!" Rupert shouted, entering the living room and throwing his keys on the sofa. "Your mother has gone mad. You have no idea what she did." I walked slowly to the living room. Penny was on the sofa, biting her nails, her eyes swollen. She looked at her husband and then at me. "Rupert called me. Mum," she said in a weak voice. "He said you made a scene at the shop. He said you humiliated him in front of Mr. Harrison, that you paid the employees with a personal check. Mum, are you spending our inheritance money like that?" Ah, the magic word. Inheritance. I took a deep breath. I looked at my daughter, a 4 or 5-year-old woman who acted like a dazzled teenager. "Inheritance, Penny?" I asked. "Calm down. An inheritance is what's left when we die. I'm still very much alive, and the money is mine." Rupert scoffed, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "See, Penny? She's not well in the head, squandering money, freezing accounts. Love, we need to take action." "What action?" Penny asked, confused. Rupert stopped and looked at her with that manipulative gaze. "Power of attorney, Penny. Your mother is no longer fit to manage the assets. She's going to bankrupt us. She tore up a contract with a supplier today. We need to get her put in care, take control of the accounts before she burns through everything on charity for employees. I felt a pang in my stomach. The man who ate my food was suggesting declaring me incapable, treating me like a lunatic so he could steal the rest of what I had. Penny hesitated. She looked at me with doubt, and that doubt hurt more than any offense. Rupert, Mom has always been lucid. She tried to argue. Lucid? She called me a thief in front of the bank. This is senile dementia, Penny. It's for her own good. We put her in a good clinic with a nurse, and we take care of the business. I couldn't stand it. I let out a laugh, a loud guffaw that startled them both. I walked to Arthur's armchair, sat down slowly, crossed my legs, and placed my handbag on my lap. Is the show over, Rupert? I asked, taking off my glasses and wiping them on my blouse. Have you said your lines? May I speak now? You have nothing to say, he yelled, his face red. You destroyed my reputation. Your reputation? I opened my handbag calmly. The reputation of a man who forges his mother-in-law's signature to mortgage the house where his children sleep. Silence fell in the room like an anvil. Penny widened her eyes. What did you say, Mum? Mortgage the house? Rupert? She looked at her husband. What is she talking about? Rupert started to stutter. Sweat was dripping down his forehead. She's making it up delusional. I told you she's going senile. I took the brown envelope from my handbag, the one I took from his office. I took out the loan contract. Penny, my daughter, you know your mother's handwriting, don't you? I held out the paper to her. Look here, page 4, collateral, residential property, and look at the signature. Penny took the paper with a trembling hand. She read. Her eyes scanned the bureaucratic lines that said, in summary, that if Rupert didn't pay his monstrous debt, the bank would take our house. She got to the signature. Eleanor Elizabeth Finch. She read it softly, then raised her eyes to me. Mum, this F isn't yours. You do a cursive F. This one is block style. She looked at Rupert. The shock was etched on her face. Rupert, you tried to sell my mother's house? Our house. Love, you don't understand. He tried to approach her, desperate. It was just a formal guarantee. The deal was going to work out. I was going to pay it before it was due. It was for our future. Future? I raised my voice for the first time. I stood up. My voice, an old teacher's voice, echoed in the room. You were going to leave your wife and children on the street. You stole the money from the shop, stole my card, and now you were going to steal my roof. I am the man of this house. He exploded, trying to loom over me. I tried to save the company that old man of yours left outdated. I deserve respect. Respect is earned, Rupert. It's not stolen. I replied coldly. And this house doesn't have a man. It has an owner, and the owner is me. I walked to the telephone table, where I had left another prepared folder. Besides this false contract, which is already with Mr. Thorne and constitutes a crime of fraud, I have here the statements from your corporate card. I threw the papers onto the coffee table. They scattered like dead leaves. The Chop House, £800. The Lakeside Lodge, £350. Tiffany's, £2,000. I looked at Penny, who was now crying silently. Penny, did you get any jewelry from Tiffany's last month? Penny shook her head, sobbing. No, Mum. Well, someone did. And it wasn't me, and it wasn't you. Rupert was leaning against the wall, pale, defeated. His legs were shaking. The mask of the good guy, the businessman, the devoted husband, had fallen to the floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Penny got up from the sofa. Her crying changed, turning to anger. She picked up one of the statements, read the name of the hotel, crumpled the paper, and threw it in his face. You bastard, she screamed, advancing on him. You cheated on me with my mother's money? You called her useless while spending her money on another woman? She started hitting his chest. Weak punches from someone without strength, but full of pain. He tried to hold her arms. Penny, calm down. I can explain. It was just once. I was stressed. Get away from my daughter, I ordered. My voice was not a shout. It was a command. They stopped. Penny ran into my arms and hugged me as she did when she was a girl and was afraid of thunder. I stroked her hair, feeling her tears wet my shoulder. I looked at Rupert over my daughter's head. Rupert, listen very carefully, because I will only say this once. I pointed to the door. Get out. What? He blinked, stunned. Are you deaf, besides being useless? I retorted, using his word against him. I want you out of my house now. You can't kick me out. I'm married. I have rights, community property. You're married under a full separation of assets agreement. Thank God and Arthur's intelligence for insisting on that, I reminded him. And the house is mine, only mine. You are a guest. And the guest has just become unwelcome. Penny, he appealed. Are you going to let her do this? I'm the father of your children. Penny lifted her head from my shoulder. Her face was smudged with mascara, but her gaze was pure hatred. You didn't think about your children when you mortgaged their house, Rupert? Get out of here before I call the police along with Mum. He looked around, saw that he had lost. He saw that the two women he thought he dominated had united into an impenetrable wall. You'll regret this, he muttered, walking to the bedroom. I'm going to pack my suitcase. No, I said. The suitcase stays. The clothes you bought with my card stay. The watch on your wrist stays. You leave with the clothes on your back. That's theft, he shouted. No, Rupert, that's asset recovery. I smiled sarcastically. Consider it part of the payment for the shop's embezzlements. If you want the clothes, ask your solicitor to call Mr. Thorne. He'll love explaining to the judge where the money came from to buy those designer suits. He froze. He knew that if the law got involved, he would end up in jail. He looked at us with pure hatred. Wretched old woman, he hissed. Careful, I warned, picking up my phone. The 999 is already dialed. I just need to press call. He turned his back, huffing, and marched to the living room door. As he put his hand on the doorknob, I remembered one more thing. Rupert. He stopped, without looking back. The car keys. I use the car. The car is in my name, and I pay the road tax. Leave the key on the table. He spun on his heels, violently took the key from his pocket, and threw it on the floor. The key slid to my foot. Keep the damn thing. I'll succeed in life, and you'll both come crawling back for help. He opened the door and went out into the night. He slammed the door so hard that the Sacred Heart of Jesus picture on the wall was knocked crooked. The silence returned, but now it was a clean silence. Penny collapsed onto the sofa, crying profusely. I sat next to her, pulled her head onto my lap, and began stroking her hair, as I did when she scraped her knee. Mum, forgive me, she sobbed. I was blind. I let him talk badly about you. I laughed. Mum, I laughed when he called you useless. I'm a monster. Shh, I consoled. You're not a monster, my daughter. You were in love, and love makes you a bit silly. The important thing is that you woke up. How did you know all this, Mum? She asked, wiping her nose. My daughter, I changed your nappies. I took care of your sick father. I negotiated with bankers, builders, and politicians. Did you really think a chancer who can't even fry an egg would fool me forever? We stayed there hugging for a while. My grandchildren, James and Lottie, appeared at the hallway door. They had heard the shouting. They were scared. I signaled for them to come over. They ran and hugged us. A collective hug without the dead weight that was dragging us down. Is Dad gone? James asked softly. Yes, my son, I replied, kissing his forehead. He went to learn how to be a man far away from here. I got up. My joints ached, but I felt light as a feather. Right. I adjusted my skirt. The useless old dear here is starving, and this time no one is going to count how many spoonfuls of roast potatoes I take. I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge. There were leftover ingredients. Who wants Grandma's pancakes? I shouted from the kitchen. I heard a chorus of I do coming from the living room. Even Penny smiled weakly, but she smiled. I started cracking the eggs into the bowl. The sound of the whisk was music to my ears. Rupert was on the street, without a car, without a card, without a home. We were together, safe, and with the truth on the table. But the story doesn't end here, because those who destroy leave a mess. And now I had a bankrupt company to rebuild, a heartbroken daughter to heal, and grandchildren to teach to be real men, not copies of their father. The battle against the villain was over. The battle for rebuilding life began tomorrow morning, and Eleanor Finch had just been promoted from useless mother-in-law to president of the family. 6 months passed since that fateful Sunday of the roast chicken. 6 months seems a short time to the world, but for the Finch family, it was the time to be born again. Today, when I enter Finch and Son Motors, the smell is no longer of mold and defeat. It smells of fresh coffee, clean floors, and the grease of honest work. I am Ellie Finch, and at 72, I discovered that life does not end when your husband dies or when your children grow up. Life begins again every time you decide not to accept less than you deserve. I walked through the shop floor. The sound of wrenches and pneumatic drills working was music to me. "Good morning, Ellie," shouted Barry from under a lorry. His smile now went from ear to ear. The wages are on time. The Christmas bonus was paid early, and he was proud to wear the firm's blue overalls again. I climbed the stairs to the mezzanine, but I didn't go to the president's office. That room now had another owner. I stopped at the glass door and watched. Inside, sitting in the chair that was Rupert's, was Penny. But not the tearful, dependent Penny of before. She was on the phone, standing tall, negotiating firmly. "No, Mr. Supplier, the payment term is 30 days or nothing doing. Management has changed. Here, we honor the promise we make." She hung up and saw me. Her face lit up. "Mom, you're early." "The cow only gets fat under the owner's eye, my daughter," I joked, coming in and placing my handbag on the sofa, which now no longer had scattered car magazines, but cost spreadsheets. Penny changed a lot. After the dust settled and the shock of the betrayal passed, she had to choose. Either she sank into depression, or she learned to swim. I threw the lifebuoy, but she was the one who kicked her legs. She took an intensive management course, shadowed Barry to learn about parts, and most importantly, she stopped getting her nails done every week to put her hands to work. Mr. Harrison called. "Mum," she said proudly. "We paid off the last installment of the old debt today. The shop is clean. Dad's name is clear." I felt a stubborn tear at the corner of my eye. Arthur's name, the only thing he asked me to take care of. "Your father would be proud, Penny, not of me, but of you. You turned into the woman I always knew existed inside." But the justice wouldn't be complete without talking about him. "Rupert, many people ask me, 'Ellie, did you pity him? Did you help him?' I have a grandmother's heart, but I don't have a worm's blood. In the first week, he tried to come back, cried at the gate, sent flowers that I had returned, threatened with solicitors at the police station door. Mr. Thorne took care of everything, showed the evidence of the mortgage forgery and the diversions. The choice we gave him was simple. Either you sign the amicable divorce and disappear, or we hand this folder over to the Crown Prosecution Service, and you'll see the sun rise from behind bars." He signed. A coward. As always, he preferred the freedom of the street to the shame of the cell. I didn't see him for months. Until last week. I was leaving the supermarket, pushing my trolley, because I like to choose my own fruit when I called a taxi on an app. My car, the one I recovered, now stays with Penny to visit clients. The app notified me. Driver arriving, white Ford Fiesta. I got into the back seat, adjusting the shopping bags. "Good afternoon, driver. Could you turn on the air conditioning, please?" "Good afternoon." The voice stopped. I looked in the rearview mirror. The eyes staring back at me were familiar, but they were sunken, tired, surrounded by deep, dark circles. His hair, once always slicked back with expensive gel, was now thin and gray. His shirt collar was crumpled. It was Rupert. The silence inside that car was heavier than on the night of the dinner. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. He drove with tense hands on the steering wheel. I saw that the gold watch had vanished from his wrist. In its place was the white mark on his skin, a memory of the good times he killed. When we arrived at my door, the fare was £15. I took a £20 note from my wallet. He reached out to take it without looking back. His hand was trembling. "Keep the change," I said. "Go on, buy yourself a sandwich. You don't look like you're eating very well." He froze, looked at the note in his hand. "Eleanor." His voice came out rough, choked. "Penny, does she ever ask about me?" I took a deep breath. There was no hatred in me, just a distant pity. "Penny is busy, Rupert. She's managing a real company now. And the boys? Well, the boys are learning that a real man is one who builds, not one who spends. I opened the car door. Before stepping out, I looked into his eyes in the rearview mirror one last time. Do you remember what you asked me that day? If the useless old dear was going to eat everything again? He lowered his head, ashamed. Well, Rupert, the old dear ate. She ate the dirt you left behind to fix your mess, and now she's eating the banquet of victory. I hope you find your way. Far away from my table. I slammed the door. I walked into the house without looking back. The car took a while to pull away. I think he stayed there crying a little. Let him cry. Tears cleanse the soul, and, who knows, water some seed of decency that might have been left there. Sunday arrived again. The scene seemed the same as the first chapter, but the soul of the house was different. The table was set. The smell of roast chicken, my classic, flooded the room. But this time, I wasn't alone in the kitchen. "Grandma, check if the salt is good in the roasties," shouted Lottie, my 6-year-old granddaughter. She put down her mobile to learn to cook with me. She said she wants to post Grandma Power's recipes on TikTok. "Grandma, I finished cleaning the garden," announced James, coming in sweaty at 14. He now earns his pocket money helping at the shop after school. He learned to value every pound. We sat at the table, me at the head, the place I earned. Penny was on my right, smiling, light, beautiful, without needing expensive jewelry, just with the glow of someone who found herself. I served the chicken. The steaming dishes passed from hand to hand. No one was on their phone. James enthusiastically talked about an engine Barry taught him to dismantle. Lottie talked about her school grades. Suddenly, Penny tapped her fork on her juice glass, asking for attention. "Everyone, before we eat, I wanted to say something." She looked at me, her eyes wet. "Mum, 6 months ago, we were at this same table, laughing at a cruel joke. We were blind. You could have given up on us. You could have taken your money and traveled the world, left us to sink in the mire that Rupert created. But you stayed. You fought. You were our anchor." She took my calloused, wrinkled hand and kissed it. "Thank you, Mum, and forgive me for having thought, even for a second, that age took away your value. You are the most useful, strongest, and most incredible person I know." My grandchildren clapped. "That's right, Grandma. You're tough," said James, using their slang. I smiled. That smile that starts in the heart and lights up the whole face. I looked at Arthur's portrait on the shelf. I had the impression he winked at me. Right. I cleared my throat, hiding the emotion. "Enough talking. The chicken is going to get cold. And you know." Everyone spoke together in a joyful chorus. "The old dear is going to eat everything." We laughed. A genuine, good-natured laugh. A laugh of a real family, without fear, without secrets, without debts. As I ate my chicken leg, I thought about the word useless. Society loves to stick that label on us after 60. They think that because we walk slowly, our thinking is slow. They think that because we don't understand technology, we don't understand life. But they forget that it is us, the old women, who hold things together when the modern world collapses. It is us who have the patience to listen, the wisdom to forgive, but not to forget, and the courage to defend the den when the wolf appears. I am Eleanor. I am a widow. I am elderly. I am a pensioner. But useless. Ah, my child. Useless is the one who underestimates a woman who has already lived twice the life he dreams of living. I looked at my rebuilt family. I looked at my safe house. I raised my glass of juice in a silent toast. "To the useless old dears," I whispered to myself. "May they continue to govern the world in silence, one roast chicken and one bank account at a time."